Okay, good evening, councillors, and welcome to the meeting of the Strategic Scrutiny Committee, which has been undertaken virtually in accordance with the enacted government regulations during the COVID-19 pandemic. Before we start the meeting, can I just remind all councillors to ensure that you mute your microphones when you're not speaking, and I can see just one of us needs to mute. So if that could be done, that helps the lack of interruptions there. Can we avoid repeating points? Can we avoid interrupting other councillors? Respect the position of the chair, but you always do. And remember that this meeting is being broadcast live, so members should be aware that the public can see and hear us at all times. And it says here to take care to prevent any background distractions. So with that in mind, can I ask Mark, please, to do a roll call of all councillors and officers to see who we have here this evening? Over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask councillors who are in attendance to please state that you're present when I call your name? Councillor Sills.
Present.
Thank you. Apologies from Councillor Newby. Councillor Atkinson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Branston. Don't believe he is here. Apologies from Councillor Buswell. Councillor Hannaford. I don't believe he's here either. Councillor Henson. I believe. So Councillor Henson, I think you're on mute.
He is definitely here, Mark.
Yeah.
I saw him shortly before the meeting.
Anyway, I'm here, okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't believe Councillor Lamb is in attendance. Councillor Diana Moore?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Jemima Moore?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Owen?
Yeah, present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Packham? I don't believe I've seen her yet. Can I do a roll call of officers also in attendance? So I've got the Director of Corporate Services, Barn Al-Kafaji. I think she's in the waiting room. She's just coming in, Chair. Director of Transformation, Joe Yelland.
Present.
Thank you. So the Director of Net Zero Carbon and City Management, David Bartram.
Present.
Thank you. The Director of Finance, David Hodgson.
Present.
Thank you. And Corporate Manager of Democratic Civic Support, John Street.
Present.
Thank you. We have myself, Mark Devon, Democratic Services Officer, and Sharon Sissons also in attendance. And if I may, Chair, just to inform, we also have Councillor Ollie Pearson, Councillor Duncan Wood, Councillor Bialik, Councillor Michael Mitchell, and Councillor Trish Oliver also in attendance, and we are quorate to proceed.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Mark. The next item on the business is to approve the minutes held on the 23rd of July 2020 of the Strategic Scrutiny Committee. So I'm happy to do this just by a show of hands. Are all members happy to approve those, or just let me know, give me a wave if you've got any comments to make? Okay, I think we're all happy, but Councillor Moore, I can see you're indicating there.
I've got a comment on the minutes, if I may. Given that the transport strategy is due to go to the Devon County Council Cabinet, please can the Chair follow up the invitation to Devon County Council to discuss the transport strategy considered by the Cabinet on the 11th of November, which is before the next strategic scrutiny meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think in terms of standing orders, and I'll ask John Street to come in after this. I can't do anything apart from alter minutes, or accept changes to those minutes. Personally, though, I'm going to answer your question. Yes, we can follow it up. Just to remind you that we won't be carrying on with the usual committees until after the pandemic is over. So that will probably come back for general discussion when we get back to the committee cycle. But I'll pass to to John for clarification on standing orders.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think you probably answered it already in that the the only thing that can be done with the minutes of previous meetings, other than accept them as a correct record, is to alter them if there is a fault within the minutes or an error within them. So unfortunately there is no areas of outstanding natural beauty. Sorry, wrong AOB. Areas of other business. So I think, Councillor Sills, as Chair, you've responded in that you can do what you can, but you can't actually change that minute, because it's not you're not trying to change it, you're just trying to ask a question. Sorry, that was a very awkward response there, I'm afraid, Councillor Moore. So
Thank you.
Thanks both. Thank you, John. So I look forward to signing those minutes. I saw approval there, so that's fine. The next item on the agenda is item 3. So this is disclosable pecuniary interests, and this is to remind members to disclose any pecuniary interests that relate to business on the agenda that have not already been included on the register of interests before a discussion takes place. Item 4 is the point when we would exclude any press and public from the meeting. There is no need to today because there are no part 2 items, so that's fine. Which takes us to item number 5, questions from the public. And unfortunately, again, there haven't been any submissions from the public, which I feel as chair is it's a facility there that we'd like to see used. So we can't because we haven't had any questions, but it'd be great to in the future. Which takes us to item 6. So the Scrutiny Programme Board, which kind of oversees the scrutiny process, agreed that the portfolio holders would be invited to move a report to each scrutiny committee on their respective issues and work, with a specific focus on the recovery stage of the COVID pandemic. Now, we met in July when things looked slightly better than they do today. I've just seen the news at over 6,000 cases. I'm not suggesting to the public that we are in any sort of recovery stage. It seems that we're very much in the midst of it still. However, I'm sure portfolio holders can comment on generally how their areas of work have been affected by the pandemic, and looking forward to the future. I mean, I hope we'll be coming to some stage of recovery soon. So just to reassure the public there, we as a council are not saying we're done with this. I'd just like portfolio holders to set it within the context of the pandemic generally. That would be great. So the format will be as we did in the last round of meetings. We'll go through questions to each portfolio holder after a short presentation from committee members, and then members of the council who are not members of this committee who have also submitted questions, and then we'll open it up for a debate. Just before that, though, there was a recent change in portfolio holders. So Councillor Ollie Pearson is now the portfolio holder for City Centre and Corporate Services, and Councillor Duncan Wood is now the portfolio holder for Leisure and Physical Activity, and they'll be presenting on their respective roles with our directors Barn Al-Kafaji and Joe Yelland, and other colleagues can come in as always. I try and chair these as collaboratively as possible. So enough from me. Can I now ask Councillor Ollie Pearson to briefly present his report, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions. Over to you, Councillor Pearson.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Sills. So as you've noted, this is a new portfolio area for me. And so firstly, I'd like to just reflect on the fact that this report that's before the committee reflects the work of a range of officers over a range of areas of the council during the pandemic, and it's great to see the work in response to the pandemic that is going on at this council in these areas. There's some very specific areas I would like to draw your attention to, although you have the report in front of you. So firstly, if we just take it in order of what's in the report, obviously we're continuing and democratic services are continuing, and you can see tonight to make sure that we have that we run these virtual meetings such as this one well, and that we keep the public engaged with the democratic process. And I'd like to specifically thank the officers here today who are making it possible for us to do this. And I think we're all getting a little better at this, hopefully, and making it as making it engaging for the public and making it clear what's actually going on. But I think we're going to get even better and make sure that, as we're all obviously in a position now that where we know that the restrictions in place are going to mean that we're going to be doing it in this way probably for a little while now. So we need to always be looking at how we can make that better, and we are doing that, and that's the work we're going to take forward. Our human resources team have been doing fantastic work, particularly I'd like to point out with regard to the transfer of ex-Parkwood leisure staff to the council as part of our insourcing of the leisure service. And this is a massive undertaking, a massive decision, a really important decision by the council to protect our leisure services going forward. And the work there of our HR team is crucial, and they're doing a fantastic job in making sure that that process happens smoothly and that we look after the staff in that area. So I'd like to thank those guys too. Obviously, if I just take two areas of, and I will ask the city solicitor to add anything to this that they would like to let the committee know. But I'd just like to also point out, obviously, COVID-19 throws up a number of challenges to our legal team in terms of the support schemes available and the reliefs available to various businesses. A couple of areas to point out, and that means that there's a lot going on in the for our legal team right now, and they're really rising to the challenge to make sure that we do that. And the same kind of goes for the internal audit team, where obviously challenges and new situations are thrown up by the pandemic. We'll just move on to talking about the city centre and a bid. Now, although we're obviously in the midst of a pandemic, the reality is that our city centre is open, that we've got shops and businesses with people in the city centre, and we're doing our best to make sure that people can get around safely and that businesses can thrive even in these times. And I want to really thank the work of the recovery groups, particularly the city centre recovery group, that's doing great work on making sure that the city centre can reopen safely. There's more work to do, and I think there's things to learn from what's going on right now in terms of the city centre. But we're going to take that work forward. But it's really important to see to know that work's been happening. And that leads into work on actually making sure that we support businesses, but also support people in the city who have perhaps been made redundant or there've been challenges because of the pandemic. And there's work going on to pulling a number of external services together under the banner Extra Works to help people who have been either made redundant or may need training to get back into work. Particularly aimed at young people and supporting small and medium enterprises to make sure that we do our best for everyone and businesses in the city. Finally, we've got, you'll see on there, Strata and our IT requirements. And I think one of the things I'd just like to point out from that, particularly going forward, is that we're all using the IT services differently and more vigorously, if you like, now than we have in the past. And I think it really throws up some opportunities to learn how we can both do things like these meetings better and get the support that we need to do them, but also to the way that we run the council digitally can definitely be improved in the context of more of our staff working remotely, and our customers and our residents accessing our services digitally. And so there's been great work getting our services online and allowing for flexible and agile working. But we really need to take that to the next level in terms of supporting our staff to do that more seamlessly and supporting our residents to be able to access our services more seamlessly online, but Also, for those who are, find it challenging to access services digitally, what do we do in this context to make sure that they can access our services? And they're really big questions that we're going to be facing and facing up to the challenge of over the next 6 months, I think. So I'll leave it there. As I said, I know we've got the city solicitor and here, and also Joe Yelland. So I don't know if they want to add anything on their specific areas, but I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, Chair, Barnum Kafaji, if I may, I just wanted to say a thank you to my team, actually. I can't tell you how many hundreds of transactions that they've had to complete in a very short space of time. With regards legal, I should say that the context of the work, the increased volume that they've done is that they did all of that at the same time as they moved to an electronic case management system to work from home. So they've implemented that. They've implemented the working from agile working from home at the same time as having gone through a restructure of the team. So it really was a huge change and a huge volume of work, and yet they were able to deliver on all of those very well and successfully. So I just wanted to say thank you to them. With regards to HR, the amount of hours they had to put in to make sure that we successfully had a cheaper transfer of the leisure staff was phenomenal. We had obviously lots of consultations with the staff coming in. Payroll had to do hundreds of transactions to get them onto our system. At the same time as doing all the additional work with furlough, which does require literally hundreds of manual calculations to make sure everybody's paid on time. Again, that team did that work in the context of going through a restructure currently. And with regards to John Street's team, I can tell you that we had a really very happy ending. We were able to open a Guildhall for a wedding very recently, which meant really an awful lot to the couple that got married, and an awful lot to us that we were able to deliver that for them in these quite difficult times. So again, hard work, but it was done with really good humour, massive dedication, and working very closely with the members to make sure that all happens on time and well. So thank you. I just wanted to reflect on that.
Thank you very much, Barn. Yeah, really good to hear all that amazing work that's happened, and I'm sure as we hopefully leave these peculiar times, we'll have a chance to celebrate not just council staff, but the work of people out there in the community that have done some really impressive things. Is in a quite pressurised environment, but a huge thanks to your team and yourself and to Councillor Pearson for that report. It's much appreciated. Councillor Henson, I see you raised your hand. I'm not going to allow you to come in yet. We've got to go through a series of questions first.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you.
If I could ask you to mute as well, that'd be lovely. So we'll go to our first question, and that is from Councillor Keith Owen, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is a question to Councillor Pearson, if I may. The document circulated to members on the City Centre Recovery Plan refers to restoring confidence for residents to return to the city centre. From my experience on the morning of Thursday, the 17th of September, which is when I submitted this question, this has already been a success. The High Street was extremely busy, and personally, I would not like to have seen it any busier. One area which has not been successful in my view, based on personal experience, has been signs, including stencils and banners, to encourage social distancing and the use of pedestrian one-way systems. Both in the High Street and Longborough Street, for example, approximately 50% of pedestrians, if not more, walk in contravention of the one-way signs. Please can the council consider alternative ways of dealing with this particular problem now that this pandemic is going to continue for many more months? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Owen. Councillor Pearson.
The short answer is yes. While we've adhered closely to the guidance issued by the government for safer high streets, I mean, the reality is there's a percentage of people who are not following the signs and directions, and we have plans to reinforce the signage at eye level, which we think will help. It's worth noting, though, that this is guidance, and there is no legislation saying people have to follow a particular one-way system regarding social distancing. The police do have enforcement powers over gatherings, the rule of 6, which is what they're attempting to enforce and hopefully successfully enforcing at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Owen, do you have a supplementary question?
Yeah, briefly, if I may. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Pearson. Can I just check what you said? Actually, I misheard one word or didn't get it quite. Did you say messages at higher level or eye level?
Oh, I'm sorry, eye level. So yeah, I think one of the issues we've identified is obviously the height of some of the signage means that if you don't look up, you may miss the one-way system. So yeah.
Yeah. No. Thank you. That is reassuring, because I find if you're looking down to not trip over things, you don't miss anything higher up, and if you look higher up, you're going to trip over. So it's a problem. Eye level would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Diana Moore.
Thank you. So my question is on another part of the report. Is the review of the suitability of polling stations to assess their suitability for social distancing going to be undertaken or being undertaken? And will alternative locations to schools be sought to prevent their closure or bringing the public on site? I know that schools have gone under an immense effort to make their spaces safe for students. Thank you.
Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, thank you. As this is a matter of political neutrality, I'm going to refer to John Street on the plans for this area to provide an answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson, and thank you, Councillor Moore, for the question. As you can understand, this is something which is taxing all electoral authorities at the moment, as there are elections across the country due in May of next year. We'll very much base our planning on advice from both the Electoral Commission and the Cabinet Office, taking on board their comments about risk assessments, social distancing and other COVID-related issues. We have been in regular contact with both organisations, seeking early sight of any advice they are to give. We are also in discussions with our own environmental health department in this regard. In the meantime, we are already contacting all of our usual polling stations, which are total some 57 in total, to assess their availability for next year. And as part of this, we'll be asking for a copy of the venue's COVID risk assessment. This includes contacting all of the schools we currently use, which are 13 in number. Our policy is not to use schools where there is suitable and viable alternatives, but as you can imagine, such alternatives are not always possible to secure. Where schools are used, we make every effort to work with the school to ensure that both uses, as school and polling station, can work alongside each other. However, this does on occasion lead to the schools to decide to close for the day. This situation may well be worse in 2021, particularly if COVID restrictions are in place, but we will continue to work with schools to make that work as best as possible in the circumstances we're finding.
Councillor Moore, do you have a supplementary?
Thank you very much. I can understand the difficulties, and in light of that, and in the report, it talks about undertaking the annual canvass, which is it's doing slightly different. Are you finding that there's an increase in registrations for postal votes, or are you encouraging people to register for postal votes as part of that, doing that canvass differently? Because people may be put off from going to vote, which is a concern.
If I may, Chair, yes, we are experiencing a slight uptake in the number of applications for postal votes as we speak at the moment, and we expect that to continue. We will also follow the Electoral Commission's guidance, who are trying to encourage people to apply for postal votes going forward, for the very reason for those who are vulnerable to try and avoid going into the situation of a polling station. So yes, at the moment we are seeing an uptake, and yes, we are encouraging people to do so, but if they do, to do it as early as possible, so as to avoid a rush at the last minute. Always helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just before we move on to the next question, David Bartram, I think I missed your hand go up after Councillor Owen's question, and as you're the director relating to the High Street, would you like to come in? Sorry, this is the problem with doing it online.
No, sorry, I didn't make myself very obvious. So I was just going to say really that there is a lot of confusion in the general public around social distancing. So the 1 metre plus message has been really confusing for people. So we've tried in the city centre to make sure that we've said 2 metres. But people are generally confused and think 1 metre plus means the reduction is to 1 metre when really it means 1 metre plus another form of barrier such as a mask or something like that. So that we're fighting a little bit against a slightly confusing communications program. I think the eye level signs will help. We don't really have any powers of enforcement. There's a lot of noise at the moment around the so-called COVID marshals. The guidance on those is that initially it was stated they wouldn't come with any funding at all. Now it looks like they might come with some funding, which may go to the Police and Crime Commission or may be organised through central government. That's really unsure at the moment, and it's also unsure as to what powers they have. But I think fundamentally what we can do in the city centre is just improve the guidance and hope that people will start to follow it and make sure that our messages are clear. That's all I wanted to say, really. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dave, and sorry for missing you off earlier on. And apologies to Councillor Moore for interrupting the flow of how we normally do things. So if you could move to your third question, please. Or, sorry, question number 3, which is your second question.
Will the council be offering, oh no, that's the wrong one. Will the council be implementing or give consideration to its own to a voluntary extended ban on evictions of council tenants who have fallen behind in rents due to the impact of the COVID pandemic? So
I think that might not be the right question.
Yeah, apologies, Councillor Moore. I believe this may have been the question we directed instead to this committee to another committee.
Chair, I do apologise, Councillor Moore. We directed this question, I hope you don't mind, to the Customer Focus Scrutiny Committee on the 8th of October.
Okay, sorry, I've got problems with my iPad, so I didn't see that in time. I apologise.
Apologies on our behalf as well. So I've got a question which is about the Kickstart programme.
Yes, okay, sorry. Will the council be offering to provide any opportunities for young people to have the opportunity to work for the council as part of the Kickstart programme that the government's announced?
Thanks. Councillor Pearson.
Thanks, Councillor Moore, and thanks, Chair. Yeah, so the opportunities that are provided by the Kickstart programme are still under consideration at the moment, and a briefing, as I understand it, is being prepared for the Senior Management Board of the Council. But this needs to be considered in the light of, obviously, the Council has a budgetary challenge that you should all be very aware of by now. We've got a up to £11 million hole in our budget this year. So it has to be considered in the light of us providing services to the residents of Exeter fundamentally. But I'm looking forward to seeing what the opportunities are of this programme.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor?
I think it'd be a great opportunity to provide work experience for young people, and Councillor Pearson would be pleased to know that the council is covering, not the council, the government is covering salaries, including national insurance, as part of this programme. So it would be good for young people to see that working for council is a good career option. So I would strongly encourage support and participation in that programme as well, if possible.
I'll take that as a supplementary question, and I agree. I think we've got to support young people through this crisis. It's so important, and I'll be making sure that as a council we do everything that we can do, including looking at what we can do with this programme.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Your third question, please, relating to social enterprises.
Okay, so what consideration will the council give to meanwhile uses for its vacant offices or retail units to encourage startups, especially for creative industries and social enterprises?
Thanks. Yeah, so the number of vacant units owned by the council is actually extremely low currently. So we don't really have the opportunity to offer meanwhile uses for vacant properties currently. However, we discuss the opportunities available for non-council owned properties across the city and the Chamber of Commerce, and I know there are some good examples across the city of meanwhile uses happening right now, although not in council properties.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Moore? You're on mute, Councillor Moore. Apologies.
Sorry. It'd be interesting to know what those opportunities are and how such organisations would access those, and would the council be open to approaches for the low number of voids that it has?
I think the situation with voids at the city council, just to be clear, is that there was obviously, when there's very few voids, obviously there is a competitive market for any void that would come up. People would be actually potentially trying to open a shop in those. And obviously, what I think it's really important to understand is that the money that people pay for leasing our shops, shop units or whatever other units may be, goes to providing the services that we all rely on, including the services that are supporting our community through the pandemic. So we do need to kind of be realistic about that side of it. However, what I would say, I think the meanwhile uses, I think it's really important that people do know where to go, and I think we'll look at providing whatever information we can as part of to make sure we can support people and organisations in taking those opportunities where they arise. A good place to go is as I said previously, the BID and the Chamber of Commerce, good organisations to approach if you're in that situation and you want to set up something. But yeah, I agree. I think we'll be doing everything we can to support uses of properties across the city.
Thank you. We now move to questions from non-committee members, and we have Councillor Mitchell, please.
Thank you, Can hear. To what extent has or will the council conduct internal audits in regard to the additional spending, grant and other loan allocations made specifically in regard relating to the COVID-19 pandemic?
Councillor Pearson.
Thank you. So that's a very short question with a very long answer, which the audit team have provided me with, and I thank them for that. But I'll read it out, and for the minutes, I hope it will be recorded. So, on additional spending, there is no intention at this point in time for internal audit to conduct a specific audit on additional spending incurred by the council as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, internal controls relating to the additional spending would be covered as part of the creditors and main accounts audit. So on the subject of local government income compensation schemes for lost sales, fees and charges, internal audit will be reviewing and challenging on the appropriateness of the claims that are submitted by the council under this scheme, in line with MHCLG guidance. The MHCLG have confirmed that they will consider relevant internal audit reviews as appropriate evidence in the assurance process. So then on the subject of business grants, the audit managers were involved in setting up the process for business grants to provide assistance with the requirements of government guidance and to ensure that appropriate controls were in place to minimise the risk of fraudulent applications. This process includes a number of pre-award checks, including running all applications through the government's counter-fraud system known as Spotlight, to identify any applications that did not meet the eligibility criteria or were potentially fraudulent. All applications identified by Spotlight were then subject to rigorous additional checks prior to processing, including asking for additional supporting documentation. Where an application was considered ineligible or potentially fraudulent, it was rejected prior to proceeding or processing, rather. The audit managers also assisted in the processing of all types of business grants, mainly undertaking the review of applications where other officers processing the applications had concerns over the eligibility of the applicant. Internal audit are also currently in the process of undertaking post-award assurance checking on a sample of all business grants awarded. This work is being undertaken by an auditor, and that has no involvement in the process of the grant applications, with arrangements in place for any issues arising to be reported to the Director of Finance and or to the Chair of the Audit and Governance Committee to ensure a level of independence. The Council will also be participating as normal in the National Fraud Initiative, the NFI, which is an exercise that matches electronic data within and between public and private sector bodies to prevent and detect fraud, which this year also includes business grants. The output from this exercise will then be subject to further investigation by internal audit, with the intention of reclaiming monies found to have been claimed fraudulently. The Council has also signed up to the UK Finance and Anti-Fraud Scheme and are awaiting further guidance on how this scheme will work. So on the COVID-19 Community Action Fund, internal audit will be auditing grants awarded under this scheme. On loan allocations, there are not, as far as auditors are aware, any loans made by the council that would be relevant. And that's the answer. And I think you can see from that the internal audit are obviously very conscious of their role. I think, as I said in my initial comments, that they need to be on top of these additional challenges and the unique challenges of the loans and grants under around the COVID-19 pandemic.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question?
Okay, first of all, thank them for that very full answer. As a supplementary, could you inform us whether this funding that we received externally in relation to this particular crisis at the moment will sit inside or outside our annual accounts? And if it sits within our accounts, presumably it will be subject to our own external auditors?
I'll defer to the Chief Finance Officer on this answer. But what obviously what I just did before I bring David, what I'd just like to say is obviously what we want to make sure is as political leadership, that we have the maximum transparency in terms of how this money is allocated, because it's important money that should be going to the right people. Dave, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. That's a really good technical question. And the short answer is it depends how it's treated under accounting rules. If it's treated as we are just acting as an agent, then it won't sit inside our accounts. If we're not, and it's been treated as a grant to us that then we're paying out to the government, it will sit within our accounts. Regardless, the external audit may be given a direction to look at it. Obviously, it will be in a material amount that the council has funded. However, as described by Councillor Pearson, our internal audit team have undertaken a significant amount of work. We chose to get them involved before we paid the money out. So I'm pleased to say that so far on the reports we've done back to government, no fraud has been identified in Exeter. which is excellent. And I think that's down to the work we did working with the business rates team to do so much work in advance of actually paying the money out. I'll follow up and come back to you. I'll have to check with my deputy on how the government or how the accountancy profession have classified it to confirm whether it will actually show within our accounts or not.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, it's now open for debate. So I have Councillor Henson who raised his hand earlier on. Over to you, David.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. One of the questions, Diana Moore actually asked one of the questions. It was on the elections for this 21, for 21. And John Street has actually answered that one quite sufficiently. Thank you. I have three other questions, if I can. One on the leisure company, one on the playing pitches, and one on strata.
Why don't you ask them all at once, and then we'll get responses from everybody.
Okay, well, let's go on the leisure company first. Obviously, we've taken over from Parkwood, which I understand, and they had a team working all the arrangements around the city. Can the council, or can you, sir, name the team that will be leading the leisure company and the positions they hold? Not necessarily tonight, but at some given time, because I think we ought to know who's holding the positions and the positions they hold, all right? That's on the leisure company, because obviously Parkwood, we've done an interaction with Parkwood, and obviously some of their people will play a part as well. The second one is playing pitches, and there is obviously with the playing pitches, we have a draft strategy from 2018, and obviously that's been knocked on its head for a moment, and we're looking at revising the draft that we had. Any further? Can you give me any further instructions as to where that one has gone and where it's going and how far we got with it? Are we waiting on Sport England to come to us, or are we actually doing the strategy ourselves? And my third question is on strata. I understand that most strata people now will be actually working from home. Can you confirm that would be right? Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. So your first and third questions, I believe, will be for Councillor Pearson, and then we'll go to Councillor Wood for the second one.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks very much. Just before anybody comes in, Mr. Chairman, could I just come back to when Councillor Moore comes on, can she be a bit louder than what she is? She's very faint sometimes and drifts away from us. So if you could just get her to talk up a bit. Thank you.
I'm sure she heard that loud and clear. Councillor Pearson, in response to the first and third, please.
Okay, yeah. So on the first question, so just to be clear, this kind of crosses the two portfolios in a way, but in terms of the staff and who will be running the council, any staff that have been TUPE'd into the council will be council employees in the first instance. So in that sense, the council, it will be very clear who they are. If in terms of the precise team, there are no specific details that I have of that. If the city solicitor has an update on that, I will let her add to what I've already said.
Okay, all right, thank you.
But I'll let Barn come in if she would like to at this point.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Barnes unfortunately had to leave the meeting, but I can probably try and answer if it's regards to the senior officer within the authority who's responsible now for leisure services, the running of the leisure facilities. That is John Paul Hedge in his position as director for the city.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Strait. Thank you.
I'm sure Councillor Pearson, between JP and other directors, you can get a response to Councillor Henson with more detail. But at the moment, it's probably very much in the early days, I imagine, is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd need to. I'll let Councillor Wood come in actually on this as well, because it is very very relevant to his portfolio. But yeah, it is obviously early days.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Wood, if you want to address the second question after you've responded to this point, that'd be great.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, the company or the way that leisure services will be delivered, it's already fairly well landed with regard to how we are going to move forward from here. As in, the leisure centres have a timetable for opening. They are safe. They've been the plans have been fully worked through. That is going to happen, and it is happening under the control of the council. The final structure of the leisure facilities within the council's care is still being worked through. The detail is still being worked on. The staff have been moved over effectively under 2P, and those services will be delivered by those staff under the council. As John Street has indicated, once the leisure services are fully implemented, the management of that at a director level will move over to John Paul, and I will remain as the portfolio holder overseeing that, as I am now currently overseeing the early stages, the adoption, if you like, of the leisure services.
Okay, Mr. Wood, thank you very much. Councillor Wood, thank you.
And further to the pitch strategy.
Yes.
The next one. There is
Yes.
a question actually submitted on that. So perhaps if you hold your question around that until that question has been asked and answered, you may find your question is covered by it. But
Okay.
by all means, kind of chip in after that. Sorry,
Okay, thank
Chair.
you very much.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Excellent. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I would like to go back to Councillor Owen's question about circulation in the city centre, and would like to know about consideration that's been given to safer streets, because people may need to step off the pavement to avoid others or to allow circulation, and obviously more people, or some more have been cycling more frequently. So how are you working with the county in terms of bringing forward a coherent plan for COVID safe streets in the city centre? Because some proposals in St David's were dropped, I don't know why, but actually we need to think about this in the round, and we need to think about how it works with pavements.
So Councillor Pearson and Dave Bartram, I presume, will respond.
Yeah, I'll respond to that and let Dave come in. I think we missed the question on strata, and we can come back to that one as well if from Councillor Henson.
I'm not too worried about the strata question, because there is a strata committee which that could have been asked at, to be honest. But do answer Councillor.
Well, my answer was going to be that it probably isn't a matter for this for us as to the working practice of strata, but obviously the reality is that most people are trying to work from home if they can. So that's that one. On the matter of the city centre and safer streets, just to assure Councillor Moore, I know I've got a meeting in the diary involving the county and Dave Bartram very shortly, where we're talking about exactly these issues. They're live issues, and I'll let Dave Bartram update you on what's going on there.
Okay, so the initial plans were prepared by our engineers on the basis of the government guidance that's released at the time, so the Safer Streets guidance, and we came up with a proposal based on the width of footpaths and whether people could pass safely when we were talking about 2 meters. So we ran those proposals past the county. The county looked at the streets where we couldn't achieve social distancing and put forward a series of proposals, for example, in South Street, where they were putting essentially taking away parking spaces to extend the footway so you could get passing there. So the proposals we've got in the city centre and other proposals we put forward for other district centres were all done in conjunction with the county. So there is an argument to say that they're the highway authority, and they should have been looking at the public highway, which obviously includes the footways, but we thought it was better for us to work in tandem with them, and our engineers know the city centre really well, so we put forward the proposals, and the county are fully signed up to them. So there's been a lot of joint work in that area, and they will continue to be so.
Excellent, thank you, Dave. I can't see anybody else wishing to speak, so that's great. I will thank Councillor Pearson for his really comprehensive report, and thank Dave Bartram and others, Barn, who also came in support of Councillor Pearson to provide more technical detail. Thank you all. We move now to Councillor Duncan Wood, who is the portfolio holder for leisure and physical activity, for a brief report.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things I would say is that we are clearly still struggling with COVID-19. We're tightening restrictions, and what we now are led to believe, I think a lot of us already knew, is going to be pretty much of a long haul. I was lucky earlier this week. I got to have a look at what I consider to be possibly the light at the end of the tunnel. And with the Chair's kind permission, I'm able to share a short animation of what I think will eventually stand forward as an icon for the city's recovery from COVID. So I shall just set this rolling. Thank you for bearing with that, Chair. I just think it's nice to actually take a short breath and look forward to what when we do get the other side of this, what we hope to have achieved. So to the briefing itself, I'm afraid no apologies for the length of the briefing. Anyone that's taken the time to read it through will see the phenomenal amount of work that the team has managed to deliver. It's impressive, to say the least. There are a number of significant capital projects covered by the report: Sport England pilot project and the welcome return of our leisure services to the council. Within that, there have been significant impacts of COVID, much of which is covered in the report, but it is a dynamic situation. We know that the guidance and the restrictions change, not quite on a daily basis anymore, but I think we are expecting more changes. So the plans that are undertaken by our contractors doing construction, consultants looking to engage with Wanford community, all has to be fairly flexible, fairly fluid. And I think it's impressive the way both our own staff and our partners have responded to the challenges that this has thrown up. And we have to have some special thanks, I think, and recognition for Sport England, who have not just accepted the delays in the projects, but they've actually given and encouraged us to use the resources of the Sport England pilot project to repurpose them to support the work the council is doing in all sorts of areas to support the community, the self-support groups, mutual support groups, etc. And so our thanks to Sport England for their flexibility and support in that. So I think that's pretty much all I would say in introduction to the report. It is long, but I really would encourage you, if you haven't had the chance to read it in detail before this report, please make some time for it later. I know it's difficult. We've all got a lot to deal with, but please take the time to read through. There's a lot of work done here, and it's very diverse. There's a lot of challenges that have been grappled with there, and our staff have done an amazing job. I would just like to commend them for all that they've achieved, and welcome our new colleagues in the leisure service that have just come online. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Wood, and thanks for keeping your introduction so brief. And for that, well, I would describe it as quite inspirational clip there. And yeah, it's nice to see eventually we might see some light at the end of this tunnel. And it's years of work that's gone into St Sidwell's Point, if not decades. So it's nice to see it shaping up at the end of town. So straight into questions. Your first question, please, Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Am I still asking question one? Sorry, just clarification, or was that being referred to another committee?
Chair, just Councillor Moore, I don't know if you formally wanted to ask it and then it will refer to the committee as it's on the screen already. It referred to another committee.
No, I've already asked this question twice before and received an answer that it will be considered. It's just a case of when it will be considered. So I'll move on to the second question.
Thanks, Councillor.
Okay, so thank you for the presentation, Councillor Wood. In the report, which I've read it all, how long is the membership only access for all leisure centres? How long is the membership only access for all leisure centres requirement? So it's only open on a membership basis, expected to be in place for, and does this apply to swimming?
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. At this point in time, it's expected that this will be in place for the remainder of the year. And yes, it does apply to swimming.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. So can you clarify, is end of the year until December or until March? And what I am very concerned that such a policy is going to particularly exclude poorer individuals and especially families with children who can't afford a subscription. So I'm worried that children are missing out from swimming in particular. So what measures are you going to put in place to help people who can't afford a subscription?
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. If you'll excuse the pun, the situation is very fluid with regard to COVID-19 and the restrictions that apply. For example, the impact of the rule of 6 on what people may have planned to do is significant, and also the latest restrictions are having an impact. What will happen next, we don't know. But I think that family swimming sessions and all that entails is a very difficult thing to work out how that will fit in with current and definitely future restrictions that may occur. There's certainly no plans to introduce family play sessions, as it were, at the moment. With regard to the price as a potential barrier, currently those who are members will continue to will be able to use the facilities at no cost. Their membership is frozen; they don't have to pay. New members will can join at £15. And I think, Mark, have you got a slide that you can put up on this one? Right, so at £15 a month, one swim, but it's not just swim. The membership of their membership also includes the other facilities. But let's say they only swim. A swim once a week would equate to £3.75, which is cheaper than all the other local authority facilities that you can see on the screen. So that's our local neighbours. That's the people that we look to beat most of the time. And in this instance, what we are offering is cheaper than our neighbours. So not quite sure how much of a barrier this will be, but clearly, thank you, Mark, you can kill that one now. Clearly, when we're looking at safety first, then the first thing we need to do is to get the service up and get it running in a COVID safe way. And that has to include some ability to control the increase of usage. So at this stage, we are looking at membership only, but we are not closing that membership. You can join, you can become a member, and as you've seen, the cost is in no way prohibitive if you intend to use the leisure facilities with any real frequency. But it will enable the service to come online safely, adapt to new regulations as they come into place, but also be able to expand slowly. So yes, okay, it's membership only. The cost is not a major barrier. The cost per benefit is cheaper than our neighbours, but we are able to stay in control of launching a new service, which is people-centred and is about the experience of our residents and our service users first and foremost, but of course keeping them safe. So we need control of numbers to do that.
Sorry, Chair, can I have a point of clarification on?
No, apologies. It's really strict in standing orders. It's question then supplementary. If you could move to your next question.
Chair, sorry. If it's a point of clarification, that is entitled under the standing orders for Councillor Moore to ask for a point of clarification from Councillor Wood.
Apologies.
Sorry. Short. I'm very sorry. So, Councillor Wood, you said that the fee is frozen and people don't have to pay anything once you've joined. So you're saying that the £15 is a one-off fee, or you pay that every month?
Right. Okay. Currently there are members of the scheme. They haven't been able to use it for quite some time, but there are members. Those members continue to enjoy, or will be able to enjoy the benefits of their membership, but their monthly subscription is frozen. But you're not excluded from joining. You can join, and it's £15 per month.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your next question, Councillor Moore, I'll take. So it says it's got 3 and 3A on my piece of paper. So if you ask them both together.
Thank you. So during the COVID lockdown, work has been continuing on the Riverside pool. So I'd like to know, what was the energy performance certificate rating for the Riverside before the council works, and what will it be once it's completed, and what measures, both physical and technical, are being considered or undertaken in order to improve this rating?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important to recognise that these are not COVID-related questions, but they are nonetheless valid technical questions. But I find in my experience as a councillor that I would suggest that technical questions are best directed to the officers. This avoids the need to wait for scrutiny committees like this, and you can get a full answer to your query. In this instance, I'm happy to pass your question on to Joe Yelland as director, who will respond directly to you with a full technical response.
Sorry, is Joe Yelland coming in now, Councillor Wood, or is that for an email?
Normally, a technical question is put into is submitted to an officer in writing, and you get a full answer. The sort of information that's required here would normally go to an officer and wouldn't be presented here. This is a technical question which goes into some depth. So I'm happy to pass this on to Joe, and Joe will do a full response to Councillor Moore directly.
Excellent, thank you. In that case, Councillor Moore, would you like a supplementary question?
Okay, thank you. I'll ask a less technical question then, in terms of a commitment. So, Councillor Wood, as portfolio holder, will the Riverside be energy neutral by 2022 and carbon neutral by 2030? Is that a commitment you're able to make?
I can't make that technical commitment because the work is still ongoing. I might, I don't know whether Joe Yelland is able to add to that, but I think at the moment work is still ongoing. But I do know that we have a commitment to maximise the efficiency of every work we undertake, and there are specifically with regard to our leisure construction projects, which are huge with potentially large environmental impact. So I know a lot of thought and research and effort goes into ensuring that they have minimal environmental impact, but I don't know whether Joe Yelland has anything that she wishes to add to that.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you, Chair. Like Councillor Wood, at this point, we couldn't make a commitment on either of those issues. However, what I will forward in a detailed email to you is the steps that we are taking in terms of what we're doing with the refurbishment to improve the energy efficiency of that building, which, as far as we know, has actually been relatively poor, partly to do with its fundamental construction, the age of the building, and the building regulations and standards that it complied with at the time it was originally built. And where it's been possible to do so, we've instructed the contractors and the designers who are working with us on the refurbishment to make improvements up to and above current building standards where it's applicable within the fabric of the building. What I can tell you is that it will be more energy efficient than it ever has been because of the steps that we've been taking very carefully at members' previous portfolio holder and leaders' instruction through the construction, and also in the way that we will operate the building. The previous contract, which, as you know, was let many years ago, provided no incentives for the operator to consider energy efficiency in how they ran the building, because the council just directly paid the utility costs, which was the contractual agreement that was made many years ago. Obviously, in direct management of the building, we will be able to, there has been an absolute focus, and already we've started working on all of the buildings in terms of assessing their current energy inefficiency. And from day one, the team, they've already been, some training's already been undertaken with the staff that we've transferred in from the previous operator to make it really clear to them that the expectation is that the way the buildings are run will have energy efficiency as well as quality of customer experience and health and safety as the key priorities. So we will be able to give further information, and hopefully at some point in the not too distant future, it would be great to be able to give you those assurances. But at this point in time, I can't do that.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Councillor Wood. Councillor Moore, if you could ask your next question, please.
as well as discussion with the national governing bodies, what engagement has there or will there be with professional and amateur clubs and the wider community in the review of the playing pitch strategy?
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. We are following the Sports England methodology, which requires authorities to gather a range of views from stakeholders, communities, community sport clubs to inform our assessment of need. We will be surveying formal sports clubs for their views and to gather information about the context of their club, such as membership, location, future plans. Following this, we will facilitate engagement sessions with other stakeholders, for example, education providers and wider community groups to seek their views. It is a way which the council has proven that it works quite effectively. There's been, not directly related to the pitch strategy, but a playing pitch in Pinhoe. Recently, it's actually in the process of being resurfaced, and local users, the football team, were consulted and have been able to contribute to that, and also other community users. And also the work we do at Wamford with regard to the Wamford facilities down there is centred around the local community. So it is what I would expect the council to do and what we are committed to do.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. I mean, this playing pictures was in consultation was included in the consultation a couple of years ago, and I'm just interested because in light of this necessity for this review and the additional cost, I'd be interested to know to hear the reflections of the portfolio holder on the approach to consultation that was taken at the time, which encompassed such a very broad scope of issues in one go. It was a very, very chunky and unwieldy consultation. And now this further review on a section of it is being undertaken.
Thank you. It's a very interesting point. Obviously wasn't portfolio holder at that time. I think it's probably less than 2 weeks since I've been holding this portfolio. Yes, consultation is something that I have a reasonable amount of experience in, as you do yourself, Councillor Moore. And so involved with it in the future. I will be looking at both the practicality of it, the palette, how much it will actually deliver. Is it meaningful? Are the questions appropriately grouped, asked? Will we learn from it what we need to learn? And so going forward, I can say that I will be involved with overseeing the consultations, and will do my best, use my best experience to try and ensure that the consultations are meaningful and useful to the process that we're trying to consult on. So I'm afraid I can't comment on historic consultation because I wasn't involved, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much. And your final question, please, Councillor Moore.
Thank you. The governance of the Sport England programme has been reviewed and accountability set out to other bodies. Please can you set out the accountabilities within the council?
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. The Sport England local delivery pilot is another effective example of this council's collaborative working. As such, it's not directly governed by the council's constitution. The delivery pilot status is awarded to Exeter and Cranbrook as a place, with the council as the host organisation for the partnership. A formal contract is in place with Sport England and the council. The director is accountable for ensuring that the funding is deployed as set out in the various submissions and delivery plans agreed with Sport England. Within the partnership governance, the political oversight sits with the portfolio for leisure and physical activity, which is now me. And I am also a member of the Partnership Oversight Group, and oversight would also be in conjunction with the leader.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, and thank you for that explanation. And whilst working with partners, which indeed it should, I mean, that's not in question, the council is, as you've pointed out, acting as the accountable body for the Sport England programme. So in light of the risk flagged at the audit committee in relation to delivery of the programme and the ongoing impact of the pandemic, would the portfolio holder agree with me that it's really important that members of the council understand how that accountability for governance and delivery is being undertaken? I have asked 3 times for a copy of the governance review setting out these arrangements and changes to arrangements, but I have received no response. To be honest, I think all members should see a copy of the report and the details of the arrangements. And so as such, I am now making a formal request for a copy of the review and the new governance arrangements. And I'm making that request as set out in the Local Government Access to Information Act 1985, Clause 100F, that sets out the additional rights to access to documents for members of principal councils.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. I mean, you can obviously do that request in a private forum as well, but Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, I think we could have done this off air as well, but I suppose there is some value to making certain points publicly for some individuals. Yes, of course, I will take this away with me. You've asked 3 times, but you haven't asked me. So of course we will deal with this accordingly. And you've put it within the formal framework of the Freedom of Information Act. Again, no need to have gone that far with me, but I accept that and understand your frustration. And so we'll have a conversation with relevant officers, and we will respond to your request appropriately.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. And just a point of clarification, it's not the Freedom of Information Act. This is the Local Government Access to Information Act, which is different. So, but thank you very much for your response. I look forward to following up with you on that.
Thank you. I'm now going to ask Councillor Jemima Moore to ask her question, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Wood, for your report and presentation. My question is, what assessment of the carbon emissions during construction of St Siddwell's Point have been undertaken, and can these be published?
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. This is another technical non-COVID related question from Councillor Moore. I'm sorry, Councillor Jemima Moore. However, given that I played a video at the start of this presentation about St Siddwell's Point, I'll attempt to answer it as best I can. The whole principle of the building design is to use technology to provide a healthy building environment and reduces its energy usage by 70% and water usage by 50% against industry best practice standards. These combined technologies will have quite a significant reduction in carbon emission and running costs year after year after year for the lifetime of the facility. Passive House certification processes is widely identified as the leading environmental certification and control process, which would ensure that the building design will achieve the exceptional and ambitious outcomes required in energy efficiency of the building. In high-level terms, the magnitude of annual energy and carbon savings from implementing the healthy building passive house strategy, when compared to normal pool, will be the equivalent to any of the following: annual carbon storage of 105 hectares or 250 football pitches of managed woodland, or annual emission from 750 average UK cars commuting 40 miles a day, total annual energy consumption of 350 average UK person households, or enough to make 140 million cups of tea a year. Specifically, with regard to the construction stage, during construction, there are a range of carbon reducing measures being taken by Kier due to our requirements in the contract and their own carbon reduction policies. These include, but it's not an exclusive list, these include recycling ground materials to reduce journeys and wastage, reusing timber wastage on site, only using sustainable sourced timber, employing local supply chain where viable, ensuring the use of carbon reduced activities such as video meetings. That was before they had to. Waste management and more. The site hoarding is a good practical example of this. The hoarding material is recyclable plastic and is hired so it will be reused on other projects when it is removed. Carbon as a measuring concept is still in development for the industry, but it is making progress. And in the future, we expect to see goods and services having a carbon value known at that time. The calculation is therefore not fully available for individual tasks during construction, but is wrapped into high-level calculations for materials and goods. But given the attention SSP, St Sidwell's Point, is attracting from developers and construction providers, we are clearly leading the way with our ambition to create a state-of-the-art, low energy and low carbon public facilities.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. Just to say thank you. It's really impressive that it's going to be to Passive standard. And I think that the things you've mentioned about how it's being built sound amazing as well. I think that my question was really the fact that as our council is building it, it sets a really good precedent if we were to be able to, although obviously we cannot at this point, to publish the carbon footprint of it, because actually wouldn't that be amazing if in the future other developments, just that is what happens and that's what they do. And I think that if as a council we were doing that with our developments, it would be setting a really good standard. And I can see that from what you told me, actually there's so much amazing stuff going on, and that, you know, lots and lots of work on making sure that the ecological footprint, the carbon footprint of this is going to be really good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I now turn to questions from non-committee members and ask Trish Oliver, Councillor Oliver, to ask her question, please?
Thanks, Luke. Duncan, can you tell me, please, how are the reopening of leisure centres embracing safety issues during COVID times, and what would trigger any need to close down if the rates of infection rise rapidly locally? A question which seems more appropriate each passing day.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. I'm proud to be overseeing the development of the new council-run leisure services, and I welcome our new colleagues transferring into the council. The new service will have an ethos which is centre, user-led, and people will be the main primary focus of the service. How the service embraces safety issues begins with the same perspective. Carefully thought has gone into every aspect of the way the service will be run, from a safety and from a customer's perspective. All government and industry guidelines are being followed. Each centre has had a detailed risk assessment, and mitigation actions are specific to each centre, following the key themes of ventilation, social distancing, personal hygiene, cleanliness, and training and awareness. Expert technical and industrial advice has been utilised to ensure that the facilities are opened in the safest possible way. We will need to close a facility or an activity within it if any of the technical mitigation activities fail. For example, the new carbon monoxide monitors indicate a deterioration in airflow, or customers do not comply with the required behaviours. We will also have to consider a closure should we identify staff with symptoms requiring a test, as well as any formal notifications from the NHS test track and trace service, which indicates a potential outbreak, i.e. 2 or more confirmed cases originating in one of the centres. Should a local outbreak management plan come into force in Exeter, we would anticipate closure of centres as part of the local restrictions.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Oliver?
No, that answered everything. Thank you.
Excellent. I would at this stage ask Councillor Martin to ask her question, but I have from Sharon that she is unwell, unfortunately. So I will ask Councillor Martin's question. And she asks, in response to the Wamford development, has COVID-19 affected the funding of the Sport England local delivery pilot? Councillor Wood. You are on mute, Councillor.
Thank you. The quick answer, no. The longer answer, Sport England have continued to fund all 12 pilot areas throughout the pandemic and have been extremely supportive on how the local delivery pilot team was deployed to support the community response to lockdown. Sport England have invited us to bid for an extension of core funding. This pays for the LDP team and the evaluation programme in 2025. Whilst we are awaiting the formal response to our application, the feedback so far is very positive and we are anticipating a successful outcome of the bid.
Thank you, Councillor. Our final question from members who are not committee members is from Councillor Mitchell. So could you please ask your question?
Thank you, Chair. Just waiting for it to come on the board. Yes. Can the portfolio holder elaborate regarding how the initial request from Parkwood £1 million in regard to the termination of its contract for leisure services was reduced by the council to £355,000?
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. I think the first thing I would say is a welcome shift from £1 million. But the detail of the negotiation process itself and the outcome is commercially sensitive, as you would imagine. So it remains confidential. However, I can say that the swift decision-making of the council in relation to insourcing the services and the clear direction provided at a political level to ensure that this happened in relation to insourcing of the service, and the experience and knowledge and skills of the director and her team are probably the defining factors in enabling the conclusion to be so positive.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor?
Like Councillor Wood, I'd like to congratulate the team. I assume they might have been on performance-related pay for this particular figure. I just wonder if he has any views outside the legal parameters of the contract about the attitude that Parkwood took if they were asking for such a sum so greater than the actual achievement at the end of the day.
Not being party to the negotiations themselves, I'm not sure whether commenting as I might choose to would be detrimental to the negotiations and the agreements that were made at the table. So I will refrain from commenting, and I'm sure you'll understand, Councillor Mitchell.
Well battered away.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, councillors. That concludes the questions. It's now an opportunity for members to ask any points of clarification or comment.
Chair, Councillor Atkinson had a hand up earlier, but I don't know if that's still wished to ask the question.
Mark, I was just about to say silence is golden, but of course you're right.
I do apologise.
No, you're doing your job. Councillor Atkinson, sorry, I missed that. Councillor Atkinson, do you still wish to ask a comment, or a question or a comment? I'm going to take that as a no. She may well have left the meeting. I believe she has another meeting
Oh,
later.
sorry, I'm just about to get ready for my other meeting, so I'm still here.
Not to worry.
But my question's actually been answered already by Councillor Wood, so I'm thanking very much, and thanking very much for his very excellent replies, and that of Councillor Pearson. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry I have got to leave the meeting now. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Councillor Atkinson. Does anyone else have any points of clarification or comments to make? Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody. I feel we touched a range of issues and topics there. And as chair, we did divert slightly from the brief we had originally when these committees were set up just to discuss COVID-related matters. I'm kind of happy for that to happen today, as portfolio holders have rightfully commented on their large areas of work. I think it's a matter for the Scrutiny Programme Board to discuss how these meetings will go ahead, because they were really supposed to be about the response to the pandemic, but we will see how they go in the future. But thank you, members, for all your comments and for turning up. Well, I was going to say on a wet, miserable evening, but we're inside at home anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Thanks all, and we'll see you all again in November. So thank you again, and best wishes.
Thank you, Chair.
Cheerio, everyone.
Bye.